The Fruitmarket Gallery had been converted into a gallery in the 1970s from an original fruit market, but it was a very ad hoc conversion, and we were asked to facelift the building in 1991. And we quickly persuaded Graham Murray that we wanted to do something much more radical.
I'd spent a long time travelling in different countries, particularly in Japan, and looking at their new architecture. And when I met Richard, we talked about different architectures. And he was a really good visualizer and architect, and we hit it off.
And the main operation was the front facade and also this upstairs gallery. And in the old days, you used to be able to almost touch the ceiling. It was so low, there was no natural light, and the only way you could get to it was via fire escapes at either end. So we revolutionized all that, with the main move being to lift the roof and let the roof fly out over the original walls, which used to be a parapet, and are now, of course, entirely within the inside of the building. So the hanging height that was available increased very dramatically.
I remember Historic Scotland saying that they'd allowed it because it was such a bad place, nothing could be worse, which was a kind of positive way of looking at one of the great art forms of our time.
In those days, in the early 90s, there was no lottery, so we had to do everything on a real shoestring. So one thing we didn't have any money for was kind of the usual environmental controls you find in a gallery and sunlight filters and whatnot. So we brought in actual daylight into the building, sunlight, which is very controversial. But having done it, I'm actually extremely glad we did do it, because the whole nature of the gallery changes its form between winter and summer, or a sunny day, a cloudy day, and I think in a way that's what Scotland is all about. And the other implication of lifting the roof up is that suddenly we're able to have Edinburgh as a permanent background to any particular exhibition that has to be on here. And some of the views were planned, some of them I have to admit were rather fortuitous. I mean, for example, if you look along this clear story, you get the best bits of the Balmoral Hotel. If you look at the front facade, I mean, I think there's a lot of games going on in the front facade, and those games are to do with the idea of putting in a kind of inner facade of lead, which seems to be moving along inside the cleared out openings of the old gallery. In fact, when the building opened, people used to ask me, where do those lead panels slide to? Because they were so convinced that things are on the move. Of course, inside, there's moving parts as well. I mean, the most celebrated and obvious example is the staircase. There's a practical issue about the staircase, which is to do with getting large sculpture into the back gallery and getting the staircase out of the way. But there's also an amusing thing that if you want to close the gallery upstairs and keep the shop running and the cafe running downstairs, you can raise the staircase up. And we got the idea pretty obviously from a New York fire escape, but working in reverse. I think in an exhibition occasionally you need to get away from the arch, you need to refuel your batteries by looking out and seeing something else. There's a very practical reason here, psychologically practical reason for this little slot window, because this gallery is a dead-end space. In other words, you come in one side and you go out the same side. It doesn't actually lead on to somewhere else. And quite often, if people who are a bit unfamiliar with the exhibition or possibly a little bit intimidated by it come into a gallery like that and there's just the art and nothing else to tempt them into the building, they can, and I've observed it happening, they can walk a few yards and then walk out again. If you, however, give them a destination which is not the art, which is actually a hidden source of light or a potential view of the city, people will actually go the distance to the far corner of the room out of sheer curiosity. So it's a kind of psychological idea that you, in a dead-end situation, you always give people some sort of destination which is not the exhibition.